We are back for the fifth and maybe sixth round selection of this Bulldog draft. Started off quite unique with that A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. We came back around, had a gigantic discussion on the third round pick. You can go back and watch those two videos in the description below. But for now, we're going to make our fifth round selection and maybe six in this Bulldog $500 underdog draft.
1, liftoff.
I bet everybody's excited that we get to do this on a Sunday morning, but it is part of the process when you're doing a slow draft. What's going on, gentlemen?
Doing great.
Nice and early for Trev, even more so than us. No, it's really tough being a best ball sicko. You gotta wake up and draft fantasy football teams. It's a real grind, tough life, But no, I'm excited for this one. The first two, I didn't, you never know how the discussion and everything is going to go on any draft with really any other people. Obviously, I love talking to you guys about best ball, but the first two videos, rounds 1 through 4, were like legit, like super interesting discussion, just like setting aside us creating the videos around them. I thought it was really thoughtful and interesting how everybody thought through those picks. And so I do think we've built a foundation now for this team that maybe makes it a little bit easier to make some of the selections, but we're also in this part of the draft where it's kind of wide open too, late 5th, early 6th on into like the double digit rounds. It's also still a little bit wide open. So we'll see how it goes from here.
All right. Well, let's pull up the draft board and let's see what we're working with here. So again, we took A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Lamar Jackson, Terry McLaurin, and we're on the clock now. Silas, if you can pull up the players that are available at the moment. I think this is, for me, it kind of set up for what we were expecting. Can you click on the wide receivers real quick so I can just run down who's available at wideout? So we're looking at like Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, Tyler Lockett, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, that area. And if we go to the running backs, we're looking at Miles Sanders, Damian Pierce, Alexander Madison, DeAndre Swift in that range. And then real quick, tight ends, I believe we have George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, like we expected to fall here. So for me, I assume that we're going to probably want to go with a wide receiver with this first pick, just based on what our opponent behind us has. He has a 3 running back, 2 wide receiver build. He has a 2 running back, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end build because he took Mark Andrews. So my assumption is he's going to probably want to either double tap wide receiver or grab a wide receiver and maybe another running back.
I hope so.
Play. He's probably not going to take tight end. Probably. Who knows? So I think that if we want tight end or running back, we can leave that on the board and we'd want to go wide receiver right here. Does anyone have any differing thoughts on that?
No, I'm trying to, if you think ahead to next round, or not next round, but the next turn at the 7-8 turn, we're probably looking at either one of both of Bateman and Flowers.
Yep.
To get our stack. And then after that, I think that's really just when wide receiver falls off. So we're just going to be smashing running backs and maybe a second tight end a few rounds later after that. So I think we really just want to finish loading up on our top receivers here, get our elite tight end, and then we're looking good.
I think that's the big thing at this spot is what Trev said. Well, looking ahead, kind of combination of what you guys said, seeing what Braden there at the turn doesn't have a wide receiver yet. One would assume he's probably going to, at least be taking one of those guys. And then he does have the elite tight end. We're looking very strongly at both George Kittle and Kyle Pitts. So like you said, the fact that he already has the elite tight end, we probably want to just push that decision to the 602. If he takes one of them, we still have the other one in our back pocket, right? So I don't think we worry about those guys, but he is probably going to take wide receivers, likely 2 of them. So we probably want to get our guy. And then, as Trev said, I think that there's a range later where if you guys love Miles Sanders or Damian Pierce or something and want to pound the table for them, I will listen. But I think the best picks on the board for us here are at the 5-11 are almost assuredly one of these wide receivers. But I am also open kind of amongst the wide receivers.
Yeah. What about you, Silas?
Yeah, I think wide receiver is the pick here. I think the running backs have enough holes to cover them that it makes sense to kind of pump it off. Really, solidify our core of wide receivers that we're getting a solid point score every week. We've kind of already played a little bit hyper fragile, with not having a running back through 4 rounds, but grabbing an upside tight end and a wide receiver just makes the most sense with our build.
Yeah, I think the 602 is actually going to be the more interesting discussion point out of these 2 picks, but we can save that for a minute. For me, looking at the wide receivers, this is another tier that I don't love. I think Hollywood Brown makes the most sense on this team, though, based on the construction with the 2 Eagles wide receivers. I mean, I'm not in love with Brandon Ayuk. I think we want to leave Kittle on the board as well. I could be talked into Tyler Lockett for sure. I could hear discussion points on Mike Evans, but I think Hollywood Brown's it for me. What about you, Trev?
Yeah, I'd be looking at. I think we have a few options here because we have Ayuk. We could say, okay, we want to make a bet on the Niners. I know we had a long conversation. We were looking at Debo last time we recorded about the holes with the Niners. So I think Ayuk Kittle would be a little. I'm not too sure on that. I don't draft a lot of Ayuk, but they have the Baltimore and Washington matchups in the playoffs. Marquise Brown, Hollywood, he plays Philly week 17. And then I really like Addison. I just think being the number 2 in that offense, we saw what Hawkinson could do there. And I think just from a receiving standpoint, Addison's probably about as good as him. He's just a tight end who got a lot of volume. And so if we get an actual, I think, like elite talent rookie receiver in that same role, just getting peppered with targets when Jefferson draws the coverage, I think he could have a huge season as a rookie. But those are my 3 guys.
God, we're going to have an Addison discussion at some point because I don't understand why he goes in this range at all. I don't even hate him, but I just think he is pushed up the board way too high right now. What about you, Eric?
I kind of agree with Trev that Addison has like low end wide receiver 1 upside. He's not my preferred option here, but I didn't think about him, and he has some pretty good matchups in the playoffs.
Yeah. We'll have that.
You're going to be outweighed 3-1 at a later date whenever we talk about Addison, because I like Addison too. It's like in a time when wide receivers are pushed up so far, you have a first round former Biletnikoff winner with KJ Osborne as his target competition in a spot where dude, Adam Thielen has been good for the reason why we don't like Adam Thielen anymore is because of Adam Thielen, not because of the role with the Vikings. And like I said, it's just so kind of a wide receiver thing. Dude, Mike Evans has Baker Mayfield as his quarterback. We know about Deontay Johnson's flaws, et cetera, et cetera. But for me here, it wouldn't be Addison. It actually would be Ayuk. I totally have, like I said, I'm kind of splitting hairs a little bit amongst all these wide receivers, but deciding between comparing Hollywood to Ayuk, when I think about if I'm going to pay for this, not necessarily just paying for the correlation with week 17, but we do have Terry McLaurin in week 17. We have an elite quarterback, so we will be looking probably to punt that quarterback too, or I know we'll get into solo quarterback builds and stuff much further down the road. But setting up another stack with an elite offense in the San Francisco 49ers, we know there's no Lamar stacking options here. If I'm going to side with, the bring back option, Brandon Ayuk is a bring back option as well on a week 17 correlation, just like Hollywood is. And if I'm going to pay for that, I don't want to do it on the Cardinals. I want to do it on the 49ers, who are like a very elite offense. It also sets us up to get Ayuk and Kittle. And we can talk about that at the 602, whether we even want that or we want Kyle Pitts. That's a discussion for a different point. But I think Ayuk gives us a lot more optionality. Like if we want to do Howell later instead of Purdy, you want to do Purdy, you want to do Howell later, it sets us up for that. Like I said, it sets us up for Ayuk and Kittle. It just gives us a little more a little more flexibility. And if I'm going to pay up kind of for a wide receiver, like I like Hollywood, I take some Hollywood too, but I don't love like spending up on the Cardinals guy, just because of the correlation aspect when we have these other elements available to us in someone like Ayuk. But I also could be talked into Lockett, Evans, Deontay Addison as well. But I think if I'm picking right here, I would probably take Brandon Ayuk.
Let me ask you this question about Ayuk. There's a lot of ambiguity about what that offense is going to look like with a starting quarterback. We've heard that discussion ad nauseum at this point. If we were sold and told exactly who was starting for San Francisco, like let's say it was Brock Purdy, do you think Ayuk moves up this board?
He should.
Because I think he's at his ceiling. I mean, if he moves up, it's a little bit. It's like half a round, right? Because I think everyone else I still like in front of him when we get to that, Drake London, that other tier we were discussing last time. I still think he's the back end of that. So my concern is he's still being drafted at his ceiling right now. But I can't push back on it because so is Hollywood, so is Tyler Lockett, right? Jordan Addison, as much as I want to have that discussion, could be higher, but he could also be way lower. I'm curious as to what that offense is going to do. So Addison, as much as I think he's getting drafted too high, I could see him going out producing his ADP. I'm not sure I see Ayuk or Hollywood actually doing that. Those are the concerns I have for Brandon Ayuk personally. But again, it's not like there's anyone else here to go to. So I'm definitely in for Ayuk. I think for me, it would be Hollywood / Ayuk / whatever at that point.
One thing on Ayuk is, he was the wide receiver 15 last year. He was the wide receiver 21 in points added. He had 4 spike weeks and 2 nuclear weeks and basically no duds. This includes the playoffs as well. Again, he's going as the wide receiver 30. He's probably the wide receiver 1 on this team. I know it feels weird and like Debo's up there, but Debo is not like a monster target share guy. And none of them really are, right? It's 3 dudes and now CMC as well. But Ayuk also has, like, show me here who has contingent value of like absolutely a nuclear smash. Like if Debo misses time, which it happens all the time, or Kittle misses time, Brandon Ayuk is an absolute monster, and he's drafted here because we have all 3 kind of competing guys, but also that's good, right? All the Seattle guys go really high. Like all the Seattle guys are like gone and off the board before all the 49er guys. Now there's a little bit of a different tiering of the ADP and stuff, but we're all comfortable with offenses like Seattle, but not comfortable with the 49ers, who are, there's like no chance that they're not awesome. Like Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, none of that shit matters. Nick Mullins made this offense good. Like those guys have made this offense good. And so just as like Brandon Ayuk is like, no one's made a case like, is Brandon Ayuk that good? Like you could probably make that case for Jordan Addison. Like, do we actually know if he's any good? We don't. He's a rookie, whatever. Do we know if Mike Evans is any good anymore? Tyler Lockett's getting older, etc. Deontay, like he draws targets, but is he actually all that good? I don't know. But like Brandon Ayuk is like a really, really good NFL wide receiver. The only concerns are nothing about him, and they're actually nothing about the offense being good. It's kind of this minutia of how it all falls together, and like those are the guys I like to take.
All right. So Eric's vote is for Ayuk. Silas, which vote? Where would you go here?
Well, I just want to go back to what Eric said about contingency. We know Hollywood's going to be the wide receiver. There's no concerns about that, right? But he's kind of getting pushed down the board because of the fact that Kyler tore his ACL and LCL. What happens if he gets cleared before the season? Marquise Brown's going to move up, and he's going to get peppered with targets. Like we're talking 8, 9, 10 targets a game because they're going to be in negative trailing scripts pretty much every day. He's going to be, we've seen him be a wide receiver one. I don't think he's being drafted at his ceiling by any means, according to Rob. Like, he's getting drafted at wide receiver 32. He has a lot of paths to be a low end wide receiver one with like some pretty significant spike weeks with how we know he plays football. But no, I'm between Ayuk and Hollywood. I do think, with Ayuk playing for the 49ers, it kind of creates a ripple effect. It kind of pinpoints us to probably Kyle Pitts at the next pick, unless we want to stack the 49ers, which we kind of talked about in the last video being, difficult. But I'm between the two of them. I probably lean Hollywood, but like it's like a 55-45 split.
Yeah. Trav, what about you?
I'm pretty split between the two, honestly. I don't think I would personally want to go Ayuk and Kittle. I have enough concerns with because I think it is a contingent bet we always see whenever one of the pass catchers goes down on the Niners. Whoever's left, they normally get a pretty big boost, and there's like a Jawan Jennings or someone who steps in and gets a few targets, but normally it just gets consolidated. So I'm not a big fan of just going and stacking up the Niners with a bunch of players. So if we went Ayuk, I'd probably be going for Pitts. But I think it more depends on how do you guys view the tight end situation. Assuming we want to take a tight end at the 6'2", who do you guys like more between Kittle and Pitts? Because I'm personally Pitts straight up, and especially if we go Ayuk, I would be Pitts over Kittle.
I think I'm Pitts over Kittle, and I think that's a great point to make because as we've established, our guy behind us probably is not taking another tight end where he already took Mark Andrews. So I don't think the Ayuk pick matter. Like it would matter if we thought that this guy was going to take a tight end, but in the sense that he's probably not, I don't think it matters if we take Ayuk. I think we're just locking ourselves into Pitts if that's the play we decide. There's stuff to talk about when we get there, but I think that's something I would be personally fine with, is taking Ayuk Pitts. So
why? I guess I'm not understanding why we wouldn't want to stack the 49ers.
I think
why would you take Pitts over Kittle on a team when Pitts doesn't? There's no like correlation angle or whatever like that, and we're in this small field tournament where like we just did this thing with the Eagles.
Yeah.
Where we condense our bets on this elite offense and said, we don't care about all the other stuff. Let's condense our bets on this elite offense. Like Dallas Goedert is still a thing. Their run game is still a thing. It doesn't really feel that different to me condensing a bet onto another elite offense in this. And this elite offense, it gives us outs to the quarterback later if we want them. I'm not saying we have to take them. The contingent bet is like a feather in the cap here. Like Debo, if something happens to Debo and you have Ayuk and Kittle is the last year and for several years now from a spike week perspective he's almost as good as Travis Kelce. He has a lower floor, of course, than Travis Kelce, but like this dude is an absolute fantasy monster. And I love Kyle Pitts, but if Kyle Pitts becomes George Kittle, that's like a monster win. George Kittle is already George Kittle, and the 49ers are just like this team that we know all the time. Brandon Ayuk just going to chug out 1,000+ yards and approach double-digit touchdowns, right? And that's with Debo playing, because Debo's like not this target dominator. Ayuk is their best wide receiver, like in terms of an every down outside wide receiver. And so I would push back on like we don't want to stack the 49ers and we have to take Pitts over Kittle.
I mean, you made a good point earlier with the Mullins point saying like even he balled out. I guess when I see it, I look a lot at like the quarterback situation. I guess when we're looking
like
at
Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, like the absolute amazing player. Yeah, when I think about it, I'm like, man, I'm hoping it's Sam Darnold or Brock Purdy, and again, it probably is fine. It's a Shanahan offense. They normally just make it work with whoever's back there, just listening to commands like a robot. So you're probably right. I'm probably just a little worried when I shouldn't be, because we've seen in the past it doesn't really matter who's back there.
And if
So
Trey Lance beats out Purdy and Darnold, then he clearly had to have done something to get a little bit better, because all indications are that this is just Purdy's job, right?
Well, he
don't
can't
give me
get worse,
hope.
Eric.
Don't
He
give me
can't get
hope, Eric.
worse. He's
Right.
awful.
Right. So if everything is saying Brock Purdy is our guy, they brought in Darnold as this emergency guy, and Lance beats them out, clearly something has gotten better for Trey Lance. And if he sucks in the beginning of the year, he's just going to get benched, and you're going to get Brock Purdy. And Kittle has done it with any quarterback that's back there, and now you're just like, the worst case scenario is Sam Darnold in this for a stack. The worst case scenario for Hollywood Brown is an entire season of Colt McCoy, like on a horrible offense. And this isn't the Cliff King. This isn't Cliff anymore, right? We don't even really know how this offense is going to work. I like Hollywood too, like as a football player, but like, this is a tiny little outside wide receiver on not, the air raid anymore. He has flaws. Tyler Lockett's moving to the outside with JSN, right? Mike Evans has Baker Mayfield. Ayuk is just like, you know what you're going to get. Is he going to be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy? Absolutely not. That's why I would argue more for Deontay or Jordan Addison over Ayuk than those other guys, because you can tell yourself this story. Like, look, we know Deontay can kind of ball out if the offense takes a step. And it's to a lesser extent, you could say that about Hollywood too. But I mean, the Cardinals are very clearly kind of in the shitter. I know that they have Kyler now, but it's a little tougher to sell yourself on this offense being awesome. I mean, it's James Conner, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, and Michael Wilson. Like, that's a tough sell. Whereas again, the 49ers, like, I don't draft a ton of Ayuk. I just think when you get set up for this potential 49ers thing, this specific tournament where, like, we just did this with McLaurin, right? McLaurin probably wasn't the highest upside bet at that spot, but we're like, let's not fuck this up right here. And Brandon Ayuk is like, you're not screwing this. Like, he's not losing this thing for you. And he actually has oh man, something happens to Debo, this is the dream. Whereas, like Silas said, I totally agree. Like, if we get all perfect health reports on Kyler, Hollywood might move up, but it feels a little bit like a Brandon Cooksian type thing to me, where like we put Brandon Cooks way up last year because he was the wide receiver 1, but the guys who win are the guys who it's a little murkier. And so they can rise up through contingency or just breaking out, right? That Amon-Ra went around Brandon Cooks. It was like, why the hell are we taking Brandon Cooks over Amon-Ra St. Brown when we look back at it now? But it was projectable volume for one guy and maybe a little bit of uncertainty. And so again, I'm just kind of splitting hairs, kind of pounding the table for Ayuk, but I just think that not many teams, I don't feel like, are going to get set up for this 49ers stack. And then we already have the Eagles stack. We are perfectly set for 0 RB. So these things kind of fell into place for us, basically, with the way to do this. And this guy takes Kittle, or we decide at the 602 to pivot and take Pitts. That's totally fine. But we'll never, like, there are no more 49ers. There's not another 49er that exists beyond these two guys. And so if we would happen to want to stack them, we have to do it here.
All right. You've bullied me into it. We also have the week 16 correlation with Baltimore. So we get the full playoff, set up here. I'm fine with Ayuk. This is not a like fight situation for me. This was I'm fine with whatever. So yeah. I'm totally fine with Ayuk, and then having more of a discussion at 602.
And to be fair, I would, if someone else was pounding the table, for like Addison or something, I would not, like, I'm not gonna totally, not back down. I don't think it's that big of a difference. I just think the kind of tiebreakers all fall to Ayuk, right? Yeah. It's just kind of like every tiebreaker falls to him. It's not that I love him that much. It's just, again, you stack up, like you said, even like the week 16 thing, just little bits here and there. Side with him.
Silas.
Yeah, go off then. And the Cardinals are so cheap that we don't need to force somebody to have.
We can get another Cardinal. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
You want Trey McBride or yeah, something like that. Yeah, true.
So convince me on that.
I was gonna make one more argument for Addison, but if you three are all in on Ayuk, I'm fine with that. I don't really have an issue.
Let's do
Ayuk. You could make a case at the 602 that we fade the tight ends and take Addison, because Braden doesn't seem like a Jordan Addison guy to me based on his start. So we might have another discussion.
Seems like a Mike Evans guy. He's banking on that 1,000 yards.
This is Evans Lockett, right? This has got to be Evans Lockett. This is a very Evans Lockett.
He's a big Baker guy.
All right, so Braden does make his picks. He goes with Alexander Madison and Hollywood Brown. So we do lose out on Hollywood if that's something we wanted to do. Can we pull up the board and look at what we got here? So we've talked about Kittle Pitts. The one thing I want to pivot to talk about for like 2 seconds is, can we just pull up the running back board real quick? If we wanted to go running back here, for me, the only person I would like advocate for in this particular spot would probably be Dameon Pierce. If we wanted to go RB, I'm not really in on Miles Sanders. I don't want to extend this Philly bet to DeAndre Swift right now. Dalvin Cook, who knows if he plays football this year, and so et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would be interested in talking about Dameon Pierce real quick. But for me personally, I think we're looking at Kittle or Pitts. Does anyone want to pound the table for a running back or bring it up or talk about it? Doesn't look like it.
I mean, we talked about the wide receivers being appealing as it is, and then we have 2 elite tight ends that also fit this structure. It's just hard. It's hard to make a case for a running back. I see, we see Silas's exposures on that. That's how mine look too. Lots of, I don't really take the like. It'd be one thing if I like loved the player or something, but there's just not much for me with the running backs.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying, like, it's not a great range. Dameon Pierce would be the only guy. So we can just bypass this running back thing. Do we want to look at the wide receivers real quick just to see what's left? I know it's going to be, it's Lockett, it's Evans, it's Deontay Johnson, it's Addison. Does anyone, I think Addison's the guy that we would have to talk about here based on our last discussion for round 5. Does anyone want to pound the table for Addison over a tight end right now?
I mean, I could.
Do you want to though? Like,
I would say, yeah, because I really like Darren Waller. Honestly, it's disgusting, it's gross, but I think he could just be the number 1 receiver in their offense, basically, and just he's the biggest player on their team. Everyone else is like a 5'8" slot receiver. So I like Waller if he falls, and that means there's 4 tight ends that I'd be surprised if one didn't fall back to us in that like tier below Andrews and Kelsey. And Addison is, I think it's a similar bet to Ayuk, except we can bet, assuming he's as good as we think, or at least I think he is. He's the number 2 on an offense that we think is going to pass a lot. They just got rid of their running back, who I don't even know how much he was making, but they're like, yeah, we don't need him. We'll just throw the ball. And Thielen was getting targets last year. KJ Osborne had some huge games last year. I think he's easily much better than them. And Ayuk, we think he's going to be much more efficient in that offense, and that's probably right. But if Addison had 30, 40 more targets than him, I wouldn't be too surprised. So that's my Addison pitch.
I just don't know how you guys can. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of agree with what Trev's saying here. Like, it makes sense from an upside perspective because we've gone so safe with our first 5 picks. Like, we know what they're going to bring. Like, we can take the shot with Addison and hoping that he literally develops into being the number 2 there. If anything happens to Justin Jefferson, he could be a league winner, right? And with the tight ends, like, we know how replaceable the position is. Like, it makes sense to kind of punt it. I know the spike weeks that Kittle and Pitts could theoretically put up is fantastic, but it brings back the uncertainty with their quarterbacks. Like, you don't even know, if they're even going to be able to get the ball. I mean, the numbers for Pitts last year were fantastic, and he literally sucked for fantasy football. So I completely see the upside case here for Addison. I think we could take a swing at ceiling here. And I kind of think I'm leaning that way, but the tight ends obviously are a consideration.
The only counter I would bring is that if you're swinging for upside, I think it's actually George Kittle. because he has the upside at a position where upside doesn't exist. You mentioned points being replaceable. They're replaceable for everyone outside of a handful of guys, and one of them is George Kittle. And if the point scoring is so low and there's hardly ever any spike weeks, the guys who can do it are George Kittle was actually arguably more valuable than Travis Kelce last year because he was much cheaper and provided all the same like absolute ceiling games. He had multiple different like 30 point games, right? They happen to be timed well, but that's the point. If you don't even have that in your bag, and I'm hoping Kyle Pitts does because I like to draft Kyle Pitts, but like we don't really know if anyone on Atlanta has that in their bag, you know, with the way that they run their offense. And we're talking about concerns about the 49ers. I mean, Sam Darnold's better than Desmond Ridder, or like theoretically better. So at least Sam Darnold was a a top 5 pick once upon a time and has shown a little bit here and there. Desmond Ridder is a later round quarterback pick that we're banking a lot on. I guess if they were to get like Tannehill, we really want to galaxy brain something, it might be similar. But I think if you're swinging for upside, it's George Kittle. This also would allow us, we have the elite quarterback, we have the elite tight end. I don't mind the Waller idea. I have concerns that he'll get back to us. It'd be a little bit past his ADP if he came back, and then we'd be pressed into Bateman, Flowers, and Waller all sitting there. Do we prioritize the stack? But we also just made this move for Addison in order to give ourselves Waller, which I think puts us in a little bit of a tricky spot, as opposed to coming back at the 7-8 and being like, look, we got the elite quarterback, we got 4-star wide receivers, and we got the elite tight end. We know we don't need more than 2 quarterbacks and two tight ends at the most. We know we're going to need running, but right from rounds 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever, we're just going to be smashing running backs. And then we can take those swings, those Addison-like swings with these rookie wide receivers later, right? Jaden Reed, Marvin Mims, whatever. Pick your favorite, Jonathan Mingo, pick your favorite wide receiver when we're going to get to a range where, okay, maybe we just hit running back a bunch. Now let's hit these rookie wide receivers here, as opposed to this guy fits our structure. He gets us 49ers. He gets us this week 17. He gets us the second biggest elite upside, I guess third behind Mark Andrews at the tight end position. I just think it's kind of, I actually don't hate the Addison thing, but I think it would be like very contingent upon, I would really love to get Waller on that team if we could, because I think part of why we did this zero RB thing is like, we know we're going to use the later round running backs to our advantage. So let's fucking use it. Get the elite quarterback, get the elite tight end, and we're still going to have a good wide receiver room. Dude, if Rashad Bateman's our wide receiver 5 on this team, we're crushing everybody at 3 positions. And then we make it back up at running back right in those middle rounds. I think if we take Addison here, it takes us a little bit off that path, even though not much. It's still a really good wide receiver pick. But I just think if I'm picking between the two, the tight end, given that it's Kittle, really, really helps this build.
You literally just made all of the points I was going to make about the tight end position for the most part. The other thing I would say is I'm a guy that usually punts tight end. I'm usually doing the 3 tight end late build. And we're talking about like it's the most replaceable position and all that fun stuff. The one counter I would say is if you look at the last 2, and this is a much different tournament, but if you look at like BBM or any of these tournaments the last 2 years in the fantasy playoffs, there has been an elite tight end that has carried somebody that has carried the majority of the field to the finals, which is Andrews 2 years ago, Kittle this past year.
2 years ago in BBM too, it wasn't ideal to have Kelce, it wasn't ideal.
No, but it was Andrews.
When I ran my Andrews, even having Andrews, he wasn't on my theoretical perfect build. It was a 3 tight end build with like Gesicki and 2 other bums that make no sense. Like, people had like 10, 11 points.
The problem is when you run the optimal, I think it will almost always give you 3 late tight ends. It's just you have to actually pick them. And in this, where we have to beat so few people, I don't want to have to pick like it's weird thing where like we have to beat so few people. So you could say, screw it, just punt the position. And I think that that's totally viable, to be clear. But it's like when I know that I don't have to beat all that many people, like just give me the superstar like let's beat people with this 0 RB structure, which is what like literally what we're doing. We got the superstar quarterback, we get these superstar wide receivers. Let the structure win it for us, and obviously the upside of George Kittle. But let everybody else try to decide if it's Mike Gesicki or Hayden Hurst, right, or Hunter Henry or whatever. We don't have to sweat that dude. We just got this elite guy. Let's beat people with the whatever, the Rashad Pennies and the, and those of the world, whoever our favorite, 10th round running backs are. Let's beat people with the spots where we know we can beat them at.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's elite tight end here. I just think we were setting this up the whole way. We don't want to punt two positions.
They gave it to us. The board gave it to me. Shout out Braden for whatever he's doing here with this team. He's given us like everything we wanted outside of we wanted Lamar Andrews. But this might have worked out better. This might have worked out better than if we got that Lamar Andrews stack.
Yeah. So I'm going to vote I'll just vote for Kittle. I know that's the way that Eric wants to go because Kittle Pitts is whatever to me at this point. Trev?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think if we manage to pull off Addison and then Waller, I would like it a little more, but it's not. It's maybe like 30% chance we can even do that, and then I'd be pretty bummed about it. So
just really quick on that, I wanted to ask you, not to delay the conversation, but like in your own drafts, how often would you, like if you were faced with this decision 10 times, how often would you take Kittle versus try for the Waller swing?
I think more often I'd try for the Waller, but most of the time I'm not doing a $500 draft. So it's more the situation. I think I'm happy with the outcome with Kittle. I think if like Addison Waller were to happen, I'd like it even more. But then there's the chance, okay, I get no elite tight end and I'm sitting here with Njoku, Trey McBride, and Hunter Henry, and I'm like, well, let's hope.
Yeah.
So I think Kittle's the right pick.
Silas, any pushback?
No, I think it's the right pick. And kind of going off Trev's point, like it's hard to say like what you would do in those situations because the tournament is so different. But in this tournament, I think Eric's points make sense.
Yeah. And we also are getting him at 3 picks past ADP, which, as we know, makes him the perfect pick. So, let's grab Kittle. Let's do it. And we'll be able to do our next round for the 7th and 8th round, hoping to get 1 or 2 more wide receivers, one preferably stacking partner, of course. But any closing thoughts before we get out of here, guys?
Can you just run down the team really quickly for the audio folks?
Absolutely. So we have Lamar Jackson, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. We also have Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. So we've set up a Philly stack, a San Francisco stack with Terry McLaurin, who is actually a Week 17 bring back to the 49ers. And then we have Lamar, and we're setting up something with him for later in the draft. So that is kind of the team right now. No running backs. There wasn't even really any to discuss at this point based on our build. We tried to force the conversation. Nobody even wanted to have it. So very shocking here at Spike Week to not talk about running backs, but we did not. So I think that's going to do it for everybody. We will catch you hopefully in a day, maybe 2 for our 7th and 8th round picks. Catch you later. Peace. Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.